That was a school bus in the APS school system in 1924 up in Canyoncito in the mountains. Photos in my book. I got that from Dennis Lucero, this guy who had grown up there in the 30s, and we drove all around the area, and he showed me all the stuff. He showed me rock walls he'd built with the CCC and told me stories. That's where my horse got struck by lightning. He said on North 14 near Corte de Canyoncito. He and I got to be good friends, and I'm really sad we lost touch. But when my book came out, his sister, who poses as like kind of glamorously in a cornfield in a really old photo in the book, she called me up and she's like, I have to thank you for making me so popular. All my old friends are calling me that I'm in a book from like 60 years before. What's up, squirrel? Psst. Hey. How you doing, Kitty? So Shadows, Book 1, PDFs. The one next to it is an essay from the second book of Shadows of Clouds in the Mountains called The Great Reset and August Dreams. I've since found out the Great Reset is some political thing I don't care to look into. But that's not how I used it. Complete Dostoevsky. That's my Dostoevsky read-through. Yeah, I was just reading through all his stuff in order as I could find them and buy them. Oh yeah, the original versions of A Jealous Husband and Another Man's Wife I have yet to be able to track down. I don't know if they've been translated. No, I think they were once. Usually combined into this one here. And that's really early Dostoevsky. It's interesting. It's actually been adapted into a movie. Yeah, I can't wait to start this project over. I love Dostoevsky. Give me any excuse to read that guy. Oh, and then I didn't write things up for these, but I read them all. Yeah, see, that's why I should just do it over again. I had some gaps in writing the stuff down I was reading. Oh, The Elements of Poetic Style. That's this Strunk and White book, this William Strunk book I'm rewriting. Revising in the same way that E.B. White did his book on style. That's Something in the Mountains, Part 3 is my intro for my book. City of Sunsets. This is this cool thing. Check this out. This is something recent for me, and it's already leading to crazy things. City of Sunsets, or what the youth of Albuquerque think of Albuquerque today. Since I'm always subbing at different high schools, at 2 of them, I asked students to write what they think about Albuquerque and how it could be made better. And then I wrote this. I used the triple column feature and then blacked out the sides using the black highlighter feature and created this cool effect. I have some visually formatted stuff. Sets the text apart and makes there be less text, which sometimes you want that. This is like my introduction explaining the project. And this is art from the students that they doodled on their papers and desks. Just say and. That's an example. And then here's the visually formatted quotes from the students at one school, at another school, at another school. Wait, no, same school. This is all the same school. And then there's this little interim commentary. And then another school's quotes. And they're visually formatted to fill it out. But anyway, so I made this into a nice zine with a cardstock cover. Check this out. Mr. Smith, that class did not like me sometimes. That's literally anti-me graffiti on this desk. Isn't that funny? But anyway, this turned out to be just a really cool collage. There's an episode of my podcast, City on the Edge, where we read the whole thing, and you can find it on Spotify or iTunes or whatever. But because of making this zine, just for the heck of it, and because I thought it might be a chapter of book 2 of my book, because I had access to this unique voice, the effect is it comes off like an oral history a little bit, even though the students actually wrote these in papers, and I just excerpted one quote from each one. I don't like Albuquerque because it's lifeless. It doesn't have any life in it because, like, when I walk in it at night, you only see cars. And if you actually see someone, it will be a homeless person. Even in the morning, I barely see anyone walking, unlike New York and Cairo, where I always see people walking no matter what time. I think maybe some cities may be better, but it is what it is. Pros, nice sunsets, nice mountains, balloon fiesta, fair, cons, homelessness, a lot of drug use, hot. But the effect is really interesting. I feel like it justifies its existence anyway. The podcast episode was listened to, and it was listened to people to by people in local government, and one of them recommended me to be on this council called the Strong Cities Council. So I'm going to start being on a council to like help figure out good solutions for the city. It's kind of cool because of the zine thing I made. Because I'm always in writer mode and open mode, as Lisa Gabbard calls it. I've always loved that quote about James Joyce that if Dublin were to be destroyed, it could be recreated by the details in Ulysses. I'm like, dang, that's cool. Not true, but cool. And yeah, it is. There's a lot of details there, and that's really cool. So I've tried to do that for Albuquerque with my book. But my book has been broken into 2 volumes, just like Don Quixote or Mouse. It happens sometimes when you get into these big projects. And the first volume is all about me like traveling around, living in different places, being very peripatetic. And it ends with the birth of my daughter when I was 25. And then the second book is almost entirely set in Albuquerque and starts with her birth. And it's more about like family and drama, poverty, woo, everything, personal demons, etc. And, this will be another great clue for exploring the city. These kids' words, like, they're part of a collage of sorts now. And I'm really glad I did this. They were so blasé about it. Even when I gave them copies of this thing, they're all like, mm-hmm. I'm like, you could have a chance to change the city. They roll their eyes and say I'm not skibbity, or else I'm skibbity in a bad way. These 3 quotes that starts with, though I love it. We see things not as they are, but as we are. Anais Nin. But even for Albuquerque, this is pretty Albuquerque. Ace in the hole. Guys, I think Albuquerque might be infected. Zombieland 2. Double tap. Ace in the hole is such a good movie. Oh, Carlos Allende Provenance letters. Yep, I sold those Carlos Allende books that I did a video on to a serious scholar and collector. That's all I'm going to say, but someday we're going to see some very interesting research from somebody, I think. Oh, this is my writing handbook. I've recently sent this to my older brother, who might pass it on to his agent. As I said in another video, he doesn't like that it's illustrated, but I think didn't I show this in a video or something? I think I did. I couldn't skip through it. It's very visually formatted. I wish people would stop texting me as I film. Just wait. And I love this project. I think the advice is sound. I don't know. I think I'm just going to end up not doing anything with it until I have some sort of a name and can... I don't know. I like it. I think photography and visuals and stuff, they kind of put you in a susceptible place. It reminds me of something Jeff Tweedy once said, of Wilco once said about guitar noise squalls, how they kind of put you in a more like, I don't know, in a different state, so that when like the melody comes in or the guitar line or whatever else, it does something. Like every note is different, as Brian Eno said. Repetition is basically truly impossible. If you're hearing a sound for the 50th time in a row, it's a very different experience than hearing it the first. That sound is not the same because of where it takes place. And I think photographs next to things can really open up, I don't know, the experience. And if people everyone I've shown this to wants to draw connections between the photos and the text, and I'm like, cool. Yeah, I think I put some of that in there, unconsciously at least. Certainly the motifs of the work were motifs I had in mind as I chose these photos and took the photos. Yeah. Okay, but that's 10 minutes on not my book, and that's what I wanted to do, was show some more of my book. Shadows of clouds on the mountains. That's the jingle. Okay, last time I looked at... Great, I'm in like a group text. Cut it out, I'm trying to film. So in the previous video, which you'll have to scroll down a little ways to find, I talked about the first several chapters of this and showed them. This book is a multi-form experimental autobiography. It's a Bildungsroman, one person's whole life, story of becoming and unbecoming, evolution and devolution, and every chapter has a unique form, and the form is dictated by the content, so that it hopefully feels organic and so on. And it's a big postmodern bomb of Postmodern perspective bomb, yeah. But last time I think I got cut off talking about this one, which is both an account of my last summer as an adolescent at home, which was like a chaotic stroke victim brain time. I'd had a stroke at age 16, and I was so hyperactive and anti-authoritarian and out of control and was just constantly getting in trouble. Like, when I got arrested for a high-speed chase, in my journal I wrote, "My first arrest!" Exclamation mark. Give me a break. What's wrong with that kid? That kid's messed up. All excited about it. Jeez. Anyway, that high-speed chase is a really important part of 3 chapters of this book. The comic book chapter, which I showed in the previous video, ends with it. This chapter, it's right in the middle. And then the chapter coming up after this one, it begins that one. Because that's how it was. It was a real dividing line. And it was also a part of the texture of that last summer. You know, all my friends like kind of feeling betrayed by the fallout around this chase. Because the result was my parents told me to drop out of school and move away. "We found you a college in the middle of nowhere. It just so happens your ancestors founded it. You'll find out someday when you research it." They didn't say, but that was true. Crazy. Yeah. You know, this really is like, what? But this is a crazy story. And it's just kind of about how, like, it ends with the metaphor of a car that won't start plummeting downhill and eventually it starts. And like, it's as kind of a hopeful image of like, maybe this kid will figure it out, you know, between the bridge and the river, as Craig Ferguson's book's title says. That's when a person who jumped off a bridge changed his mind. In some interview that he took that title from. Prisma's actually a robot. I have to charge her. She's charging. Just a joke. Oh, they're hanging out. That's sweet. I think this essay is key, but it's kind of weird the way I wrote it because it's also like an obsessive exploration of Annie Dillard's Wholly the Firm, and it alternates between the two. But it's kind of like a key chapter in the book in that it declares like what my approach to nonfiction is going to be, because I'm talking about her approach to nonfiction a little bit and just other approaches to nonfiction. And I'm like, I really like how she transmutes her experience into something else. And like she quotes Julian of Norwich at one point, the first woman to ever write a book in English, Reflections of Divine Love, which I have not read. She was walled up in a cathedral back in the day writing away. She just took her name from some other famous saint, some guy, Julian of Norwich. Okay. Your name, that's my name too. But she quotes her as having said that there's no point in mentioning details because God is not glorified by any particular thing. Interesting. And I think Annie Dillard might have a similar approach because she's kind of like, change detail around, why not? But it gives me a chance to say, like, you know, there are different approaches, but mine is not going to be that. I really have a truthful intent with this book, and I'm trying to get the details right. And, you know, I'm doing additional research, etc. So I think it's kind of a key chapter for that. And it's nice to have a prose chapter after that long comic book chapter. And this was one of those prosy prose chapters where I got to really, like, get lyrical a little bit. Because like Annie Dillard's book, one of the reasons I reviewed that was because she describes all her days as gods in Wholly the Firm, riffing off of an Emerson quote. And so I do the same thing here in this book and describe the three of the most eventful, interesting days of my last summer at home that I documented well. I was a really good journal keeper back then. And so I have a lot of notes and other things from that allowed me to, anyway, and my own memories, of course. I often curse my religious upbringing, but the impulse to write things down and keep journals and all that stuff, for whatever reason, I guess I do appreciate having had that in my life. This next chapter is called Dear People Who Want Me Gone, and it's book length. And I just remembered that an editor at UNM Press, who's kind of a cool acquaintance, maybe becoming a friend, told me to send this to him because he's interested in the area this is about. I should do that. Yeah, note to self, send this to Brenton. But it's called Dear People Who Want Me Gone, comma. And the conceit of this is that it's written as a giant letter to the school board. It's 230 pages long. This one got away from me, but I also realized that was such an interesting time And I'd love to see this chapter like loosely adapted into like a TV series or something sometime because it was such an eventful time. Hey, if Friday Night Lights can do it, that was a nonfiction book at one point. It's, you know, long running show with continued adventures with people that have the same names as real people. But this documents such an interesting time. So yeah, when I was 17, got in a high speed chase, was in a lot of trouble a lot of times, and there was a whole deal. Had my friend fake a seizure to get out of it, and it was a whole thing. Read the book later, whatever. Like you're perfect. Just kidding. So anyway, my parents were like, "You're pretty hyperactive and impossible to govern. How about you move several hours away from here? We found this place out in the desert. They'll take New Mexico residents on scholarship, in-state scholarship still. Go check it out." So I got my GED and I went there. And so this one starts with that chase. And I say stuff like, "Dear people who want me gone. Okay, all right, I know this is like an official appeal to you. You, the school board of Eastern Arizona College. The latest of several appeals. I know there's a process, a proper way for me to officially beg you all not to throw me out of the dorms. But if instead it was a movie, it could begin like this. Exterior, high desert road, night, an exceptionally hilly paved road in a high desert area east of New Mexico's Sandia Mountains. A road 3 teenage friends and I are driving on in a white camper-shelled truck, hurtling uphill fast so that we can launch from hill after hill, leaving the ground. Next, a good shot would be the truck rocketing over one hill from in front of it, kind of below it at an angle, and you could see everybody's face inside, dully illuminated, mouths open, laughing, exclaiming, 2 clean-cut young men and 2 slightly edgier young women, and then the picture freezes like, this is the end of youth, or at least one of these people's youth, of this chapter of it anyway, and then the movie's title appears across the horizontal rectangular screen in big bold block letters. Dear people who want me gone, don't forget that comma before the title disappears and a song begins or blooms. Say Roxy Music's resplendent 1973 cover of Bob Dylan's 1963 A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. I forget what we were actually listening to, maybe Morphine or Matthew Sweet or Bob Dylan himself. And now everything restarts, the truck slamming down onto an asphalt decline, clouds of sharp red sparks scattering up from around its wheel wells like a firestorm. No, this feels familiar, and not only because I was there when the scene happened. The brown-haired, brown-eyed, skinny young white man in the driver's seat. I mean, I'm fairly sure it's been done in some other movie or show. I just can't think of which 10. But the camper-shelled truck, the marshmallow, with me driving, jumps another hill before a car pulls out from roadside shadows, its blue and red lights suddenly flashing, its siren suddenly loud, an electronic wail, blue shifting after us over the hills. This was Friday, July 4th, 1997, maybe Saturday, July 5th, if it was after midnight, and was the scene that arguably started all the trouble. This year of lasting trouble. Some high-speed fun while taking my friends home after a minor league baseball game down in Albuquerque. A scene that quickly intensified into something more. A high-speed chase, and then more police, and then more chase, and then a crash, and then a desperate ploy. Don't shoot, my friend's having a seizure. My epileptic friend faking a seizure, and soon after, my arrest. For about a month before this, understandably maddened by my hyperactivity, my constant vocal anti-authoritarianism, and their inability to ever get me to obey them at all. In my defense, I had suffered a then paralyzing stroke in high school. I may have literally been brain damaged. My mom and dad had been pleading with me to drop out of high school, get my GED instead of a diploma, and go right to college. And this incident quickly turned that plan into the plan. I had been wavering, uncertain, but the day after the chase and my arrest, my mom let me know there really was no choice anymore. That was what I was doing, and drove me down to TVI, Technical Vocational Institute, a community college in Albuquerque, to start the test. So that was kind of that then, you know. And that starts the next part. I'm really happy with this piece. It's long. It's a crazy book. It goes month by month. And it kind of went like friend viral. Do you ever like send something to a friend and it gets passed around to other friends and you hear from people you didn't think you'd hear from? That happened with this. I also had a couple people not respond and not get back to me. It has block quotes from historical things and tries to bring big context. And there's a lot of quotes in it. This is from Geronimo's autobiography of the area. This is from Pima Remembers, which is this amazing book from the O'odham tribe in Arizona. It's funny, Pima is just what the Spanish called the O'odham. and it means I don't know. So the Spanish are always asking him stuff like, "What's this?" And they're like, "I don't know." Pima, Pima. So when you see Pima Medical Institute or any place named that, because it's a common place name in the West now, it means I don't know. I'm going to the I don't know Medical Institute. This is so incredible. This block quoted account here is an account from a native perspective of the first white people into an area. Check this out. I mean, no, you know what? I'll say this when I see that book in the collection. It is so cool, though. It's one of the most interesting historic pieces of Western writing. You know, seeing the pioneers rolling in their canvas wagons, and the indigenous people. I mean, if you read that book, it's like, man, life sounded really good before the European descendants showed up. I'm sorry, everybody. Jeez. Not that there weren't wars and things before European contact. There totally were. And there was violence, etc. No places or time is perfect. It's from an old newspaper article. Take one look at Safford and you can understand why the locals favor development and are so hostile to environmentalism. The place as a whole doesn't have the sort of small town character found in places like Superior, Miami, or Globe. It's just a dump with nothing going on. That's where this takes place, Safford and Thatcher, Arizona. Let's skip through this really quick because it's 230 pages. But I'm really happy about this one. And I got to hear from old friends and stuff when it came out. Oh, and part of it was going back to Arizona and seeing the place again. That's factored in. And I'll probably do another essay on that in book 2, maybe. I don't know about that. But that was a crazy experience. I do write about it in this one. So that's probably enough. And when we went back, we found all these evidences. Like, it just so happened my ancestors lived in that area. That were like this really influential family that built up the town of Pima, and that built the local music performance hall. And some ancestors built the college, the first version of the college that I went to. What? It's so crazy. But a number of my chapters are book length, and I think it's really funny because if I can get anyone to read my book, it's more like I've tricked them into reading like a whole bibliography. And so this chapter has kind of an unrealistic conceit that it's a letter to the admin, but it gets kind of meta as it goes on, and I'm just like completely open that it's not really a letter. And like, obviously, I'm writing this far in the future with different knowledge, you know. But I did find this from an old letter so that I could scan to, like, that's a real signature from an old letter. Because the whole format, again, of this, it's very novelistic, but it's like supposed to be a letter to the school board to not kick me out. Because I was constantly in that state. I was just constantly getting into trouble. And but it was in this like beautiful wild desert setting with deep connection to big stories. And this is also the chapter that I include all of my Arizona family history in, which is a lot. It's woven throughout it. All of my ancestors that lived there are mentioned in it. Direct ones, you know. It's kind of secretly a history book of the whole area and a little bit of the whole West. Haha. Because that's how I roll. Like, maximalism is really cool. It's kind of a trick in a way because that kind of a scope, you end up liking, you know, when you spend that much time with anybody. That's why even mediocre TV shows have these like, you know, loving followings because it's like we hung out with you for so long, you know. We know you a little bit, in a way, whoever you are, fictional or otherwise. Parasocially. Here's the interstitial section heading for north. This is when I leave my adolescence. So the previous sections were youth and growth, and now north. Got a little consonant connection there. And this is all Alaska. Like, this section, I think, could be published alone, like by an Alaskan press or something. Maybe we'll do a fundraiser or something. I'll try to get stuff like that in my contract. You know, that'd be cool. Like, help homeless people in Anchorage or something, because that is a sad situation. They're all missing noses and fingers from frostbite. To them, I say, hitchhike south, guys. You're in the worst place to be homeless. Seriously. But that's easier said than done, I'm sure. But yeah, so here's the 4-page interstitial section. And again, these interstitial sections, they're formatted like this, you know, to be friendlier in a way. Maybe I should add paragraphs, but I kind of like the column effect, I think. I want to keep it that way. Paragraphs might make it more accessible, but they're already pretty densely written and are saying a lot. So I think I might keep it as is. I'll think about it. As you can see, I'm still in the process of finalizing how everything will be, but I do have a pretty clear vision of it. So then we've got the first Alaska one. It's called Into the Wild or Wherever, I Don't Know. The reason I went to Alaska was fourfold. Did a report on it in 5th grade, saw a magazine on it in a dentist office when I was 14, read Into the Wild, that was the big one, and met and made a really good friend who was from there and invited me to stay up there. But he knew I was interested in going up there. So this chapter, this form is a little, could be considered obscure, but it's like a lost chapter of the book Into the Wild. I totally ripped off the form of Into the Wild. Starts with an image. I made this out of construction paper and scanned it. Just black and white and gray paper. Typewritten. No frame also. That's how it is in that book. And I called it Into the Wild or Wherever, I Don't Know, and it starts with quotes. And I made the attributions of the quotes really long. I'm not particularly satirizing Into the Wild or anything there. I'm just like, I thought that would be funny. A lot to say, so why not? Like, everything good should start with something. Graffito on asbestos. And I use the word graffito because Krakauer uses that. I try to use similar vocabulary in this chapter. Graffito on asbestos, a graffiti-encased concrete shell said to be an abandoned asylum near the ocean in Nikiski, Alaska, where Mike Smith and his friends would go to drink beer and smoke. Okay. All right. Shoot. All right, I wanted to... All right, you know what? Everyone's got their stuff. No, now I can't post this. All right, I'm just going to say it was just my friends doing all that stuff, okay? All right, leave me alone. Starts with quotes. And then this is this is a cool one. It's kind of about going to a place full of a myth and like encountering the reality. Like, we watched a lot of Seinfeld in Alaska. That's not very Alaskan. We watched a lot of World's Wildest Police Chases and, ate at Taco Bell, shopped at Fred Meyer's. And I don't know what I was thinking. But so the way that I wrote this is I wrote it that my past self is third person. And I just talk about myself as Mike Smith and Mike. And actually, I think I might just call myself Mike Smith or Smith, huh? Anyway, but when I write from today, I'm in first person. There's so many different things you can do with perspective and tense and every aspect of writing, really. And I feel like people have only just begun to creatively experiment with all these things. People have. But I see the most simplistic reductions of all of these things and people that just think they've grasped it all to have a simple idea of it. Anyway, Mike Smith was right about some of these things and really pretty wrong about others. And I can speak with authority on him as I have studied Smith's life as I have no other, paying close attention to near every moment in the hope of eventually chronicling him as James Bosworth once chronicled Samuel Johnson. Smith and I have many things in common, too. We have the same name, which I find interesting. We've liked a lot of the same books. We've liked many of the same films. We've usually both tried to be fundamentally decent, but have not always succeeded. Our childhoods were basically identical, although his was more vivid. And I do look like him, although Smith possessed a radiance I lack and had stupider hair. Like him, I have brown hair, brown eyes, and eyeglasses, and I am also 6'3.5", although not quite as skinny. Oh, and once I was Mike Smith. And when Mike Smith grew older, he became me. Still, we're not even remotely the same person. 30-something and then middle-aged me. Oh yeah, that's when I wrote this. Okay, I need to update that. No, I don't, because and then middle-aged covers that. And 18 and then barely 19-year-old him. That guy owned and listened to Blues Traveler. The judgmental snob. But yeah, so it goes on. And I read this one live at a really unusual event for me. They used to be called Church of Beethoven and then changed their name to Sunday Chatter. I've never heard of a worse name change in my life. Went from a great name to the most barely okay name I've ever heard. Anyway, it's a much more upscale crowd than I usually hang with. And people with money. Anyway, I got asked to read this, and I read this whole essay in front of them, and it's got some real screeds, we're ruining the environment elements, and I saw some very uncomfortable glares in the audience. But also it was well received, and there were a few individuals that were way into it, and they came up and talked to me afterward. That was cool. Now we get to the chapter. This is the one unfinished chapter of book one, and I'm still working on it, but I've got to get all of these interviews with people, and then I have to transcribe them. I have 7 more interviews to do, and those will be split into 9 parts. 2 of them will be split into 2 parts. And It's called The Endless Winter, or Soldatna, an Oral History. Starts with 3 quotes about me, but look, people are just calling me. When I think of characters of that time, you're the character. You always seem pretty high energy to me. I'm going to have like a good quote and a bad quote and an ugly quote from people, I think, for that part. Something like that. That's just a loose guiding idea I have. Noted down here. And I got some visuals, like maps establishing the world. And I've got this 4-page intro. I love this intro. This is some of my favorite prose in the book, honestly. I'm like, oh, I tapped into something there. Yes, I love when that happens. And it's italicized, which is a risk. But, get over yourselves, people. Sometimes you need to... No, I'm talking to myself. And then a map from an old book. Photo from an old book that I have, but it's just a close inset and it has parts circled. I credit it, so I hope I can get away with that. And then it's like an experimental selection where it's going to be 10 quotes about Soldatna, the town that this was in, 1 from each of the interviews, and those quotes won't be repeated in the later interview parts. They're excerpted from it, taken out completely. And so 4 pages of that. That'll be visually formatted. The only big word will be Soldatna. And then that's filler page just to show that there'll be pages there, so I can think about the layout. Visuals, these were taken back at then. I make sure that there's really no people. And then each person's interview will look like this. Start with an italicized description of them by me, with kind of from a no point of view, just, real stark, third personish, not mentioning me. And then there's sections, as you can see. And I get everyone's real words, and it's so... Memory of the Dark. I've got this all memorized. I have what could be called access to the Akashic Records. I can probably go deep when it comes to going back in time. I can be 19 again. This is my friend Jason. Each one will be headlined Soldatna and Oral History in the formatting, because Soldatna can mean soldier or stream fork or a kind of herb, and those are just great metaphors that I use from that meaning. It's the name of the town, too. So isn't that like people, soldiers, forks in a stream, herbs that can harm or heal, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I've only got 3 interviews so far. Each one will end with an image, if there's space at the end. If there's not space, it won't. And Danny, Nathan, and Jason. But when you read 10 of these broken into 12 parts, as if the hours of a time around me, it's also secretly in second person because they're all talking to me, but I edit out any traits of myself beyond what's in the story so that the reader can kind of be the person. Like, there's different kinds of second person voice. For instance, Bright Lights Big City is about a very specific character. He's from Kansas and his mom died and he's sad and he works in Wall Street and he's trying to drown his feelings. That's a very specific person. Mine is like a blank, a ghost, an absence of a person. Identified only by the details in this piece that could be you, the reader, whoever you are, this or that age. So then I've got some ephemera here, an old website, an old brochure. And then I have quotes about cold and dark from everybody, 10 quotes, so it's a collage. I'm very inspired by Svetlana Alexievich and her oral history, artful layouts, and I want to do my own take on all that stuff. But this oral history is a work of memoir. But still, why shouldn't memoir and oral history, work together? It's fascinating to call people up and interview them about your own life and what happened. Why do you have to have like a murder or something bad to ever make that happen, So then 4 pages of quotes about cold and dark, some more visuals. Second half of the interviews, these are filler pages. And this will be 142 pages, I think, when it's done. That's a significant number. If you know, you know. It's the bus from Into the Wild. Anyway, which I also, these are also photos from that time. And then the last quotes will be just kind of poignant conclusions or thoughtful conclusions from all 10 people. And also visually formatted another collage section. And then it will end with these 2 visuals. That's my old campsite where I moved out into the woods. And then another outro. This is my favorite piece of writing in the book, I think. I love this outro so much. I'm just like, dang. At least at the moment. And then it ends with this. That was my bike. So that's Soldatna and Oral History. It's currently a 72-page chapter, but it's going to be a 142-page chapter. It's the one unfinished chapter of book 1, and I can't rush it. Everybody, even writer friends that I feel like should know better, and siblings and everybody are always like, just hurry up and finish it. I'm like, you don't think I've thought about this? How to knock it out? But I have to do justice. And also, the sunken cost fallacy is also the sunken cost argument. I put a lot of time into this biz and effort, and I want to do it right. And I don't want to have incomplete parts right in the middle of it. I've thought about, how can I do the intro and outro really simple? Can I not do the big idea I have? And no, I have to do the big idea. Dang it. I've got to do this chapter right too. And it really is contingent on getting these interviews done. But I'm going to step it up and get this done. Soldotna and oral history, I love you. This chapter comes after it, but it was the first one I wrote of the Alaska chapters, I believe. The world greening wildly. And no, that's not a formatting error. I like it. And also, I want all these sections to end to be be even numbered on the pages for formatting reasons. I know the publisher will go over it, but I want it to look really good when I present it. And also, I'll probably do like print-on-demand copies for proof of concept after it's all done, just so people can see it in its glory. I don't want it to get all hacked up. I don't want to be like Thomas Wolfe bringing a giant manuscript to Maxwell Perkins and being told, okay, we'll publish 1/10 of it. Let's hack it down. No. This is a maximalist work. Knausgaard's book is 3,600 pages, all right? I put more thought into this. I love it. My Struggle's a masterpiece, but he says he dashed it off, He didn't even reread parts of it. But the idea of this one, I'm like trying to make jewel-like facets to all my chapters. I'm like too ambitious. I've probably badly misplaced my priorities in life to make this book this detailed. Like I should be more published now. Why did I pick this giant 60-chapter maximalist thing for my first major project? Weirdest sophomore effort ever, First album, tiny local history book with photos. First book that. Second book, 60-chapter, 2-volume maximalist work totaling 4,000 pages. The World Greening Wildly, this is about the spring and the summer of, I guess, 98. Was it 98? Maybe 99. Some year. So every section, it's divided into sections, as you can see, is it doubles in word count length. This was a very precisely written thing. I wrote this when I was doing late night home care work, and the next essay, watching these 3 mentally unstable individuals that I'm calling the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost when I write about them. Amazing how their real names line up to that. It's crazy. Anyway, interesting people. And the art one of them made, oh my goodness. Some time ago, I saw this guy standing out on the street, and he was dressed up like Freddy Krueger and Jason. He had the hockey mask on and the Freddy Krueger claws, and he was just sharpening his claws on a fence. And then I was like, oh, that's that guy I used to hang out with every night. Anyway, yeah. One time he left an open bottle of Windex by my coffee, and I'm like, well, not drinking that. Always joking about killing me, and they weren't that funny jokes. One of those guys was an incredible artist, and his art still shivers through my being when I remember it. Just like a line drawing of a horse with 2 words. And I'm like, This piece that I wrote during that time, the first line is, I lived in the woods and then left to go traveling. And then those 2 halves of that sentence always get repeated, and they begin and end every clause that keeps every paragraph that goes. And I think, are they sentences?